You need to brace yourself for this one. Dave Chappelle just dropped the most provocative bit on his new Netflix special, The Dreamer, and it's taking the internet by storm. If you've been following the controversies around Dave in the last few years, you know that the man just cannot seem to be canceled. And guess what? He's realizing that fact and used it to push the line of offense farther than any comedian has done in a while. This time the subject was the transgender idea, drawing from the time he met Jim Carrey while Jim was in character for the film Man on the Moon, proceeding to set up the most explosive punchline in the end. Just watch this.
As he knew that I was the biggest Jim Carrey fan in the world. Now, I'm not going to go all into it, but Jim Carrey is talented in a way that you can't practice or rehearse. What a God-given talent. I was fascinated with him. And Norm knew that. And he called me up and he goes, Dave, he says, I'm doing a movie with Jim Carrey. Do you want to meet him? And I said, yes, I do. And it was the first time I could remember since my father died being excited.
Admittedly, Dave is a very different comedic mind to Jim Carrey, but there's one thing about him that's rubbed off on Dave Chappelle, and that is using comedy to expose the absurdity of the prevalent social ideas at the time. With a character like Chappelle, there's a sharp tinge of offense that goes along, and that's a big part of his appeal in the first place. The man's career in the last few years has become the center of great heated debate, including threats of being canceled for his over-the-top jokes that some people say only punch down. Remember when his penchant for picking on sensitive subjects like LGBTQ eventually boiled over into actual physical violence from an audience member? A man named Isaiah Lee, identifying as bisexual, had apparently had enough running on stage to tackle and take down Dave Chappelle for it.
Producers that hip-hop has ever presented, the mighty Mad Lib. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for hip-hop history.
That is just one instance of the anger against him spilling over. There's been plenty of attempts to take him down on a professional level, including pressure from within Netflix employees, and even multiple venues refusing him a place to host his live shows. But so far he's only been pushing the envelope further and making a lot of people laugh in the process. This latest Netflix special is just more evidence of that.
Jim Carrey was so immersed in that role that from the moment he woke up to the time he went to bed at night, he would live his life as Andy Kaufman. I didn't know that. When they said cut, this was still Andy Kaufman. I was very disappointed. Because I wanted to meet Jim Carrey, and I had to pretend this was Andy Kaufman all afternoon. I say all that to say, that's how trans people make me feel.
What is incredible is that you're sure there's a punchline coming and yet you don't see it. From the delivery to the timing, Dave Chappelle makes sure to get a laugh out of you even if inside you're offended by the subject of the joke. And that's what you see here as well. See the audience and how almost everyone is clapping? At least they know what they're going into when they are buying the tickets. Now, while there's certainly examples in his career, otherwise, a large part of his material actually pokes at society's most glaring sensitivities and insecurities. And in today's America, the topic of transgenderism is perhaps the biggest one of all. In fact, back in 2021, we saw a wave of attempts to cancel Dave Chappelle when Netflix employees, organized by the group called Team Trans, organized walkouts from any show that he was featured in.
It's okay to laugh, but you're sparking hate conversation.
They walked out of the office in Hollywood Wednesday morning to protest his new special on their streaming service, calling it transphobic.
But anyone that knows Dave knows he's not the kind to back down, apologize, or tone down his content for the sake of someone's sensitivities. Over the years, there's particularly been friction between Dave Chappelle and trans people, offended over his jokes, and at this point, it doesn't even matter to argue over who picked this fight. What matters is the fact that every time there's an attempt to bring him down, his reach gets bigger, almost to the point that he can't be canceled. I think there's a common thread here with someone like Ricky Gervais, who is also said some pretty inflammatory things in his comedy that would get any other artist deplatformed. The difference perhaps is that comedians like this just own it. They don't apologize, instead they double down, which is rare in the current social media landscape, and once they've reached that critical mass, they are almost impossible to cancel. At which point platforms like Netflix are forced to choose between profiting from his work or let a rival company do it instead, because they understand that Dave Chappelle isn't going anywhere if they don't. I mean, just look at this next clip and tell me how many names in comedy can get away with this.
God forbid I ever go to jail. But if I do, I hope it's in California. Because as soon as the judge sentenced me, I'll be like, Your Honor, before you sentence me, I just went to court to know I identify as a woman. Send me to women's jail. And as soon as I get in there, you know what I'm gonna be doing? Give me a fruit cocktail before I knock your teeth out. I'm a girl just like you.
A joke like this comments on something very real and contentious, but it's also that tinge of discomfort that eventually makes people laugh, making them go along with the premise of the joke. That's what great comedy of this genre does. And it's no secret that offense and ridicule are just ways of illuminating a deeper idea embedded underneath, yet most people never scratch the surface and actually contend with the core of the subject. That's why free speech becomes all the more important when it comes to the area of comedy. You just can't have comedians walking on eggshells and potentially miss shedding light or starting conversation around an important idea. That's partly the job of a comedian in society, especially as it regards big cultural shifts like the idea of transgender people in prisons or personal neo-pronouns. The mere fact that Dave Chappelle's show rakes in such a large number of people is evidence of the fact that the audience wants to listen. Right now, Dave Chappelle's new special on Netflix is proving to be even more successful than his previous runs on the platform, which is just more proof that there are enough people that want to watch him. It's also perhaps important to note that Dave's personal views are likely not as abrasive as the content he puts on stage. But apparently that has not stopped a segment of the audience from going haywire in the fact that he's even airing. And it's clear that Dave Chappelle will not be numbing down his entire comedic persona to make them feel better.